Today is Bookmas Day 9 of our 12 days of Bookmas, and we thought today would be fun to sit down and go over our top 23 books of 2023. Together we have read over 180 books, so we have made a list of our top books of the year. I want to start off by saying the books that I'm going to say are in no particular order. But I thought I would start off with Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid, because this was actually the first book that I read this year, and I'm still thinking about these people and these characters in this story. So in this one we're following Carrie Soto. It's set in 1994, and we're watching Carrie Soto see her title be shattered by somebody else. And she's in retirement. So she's going to come out of retirement to prove that she is in fact the best woman tennis player there ever was.
And ever will be.
Exactly. There honestly really is no surprise here that I loved this book, because I've loved every single book that I've read by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Her writing gets me completely engaged in any story that she writes. The plot, the characters, the setting, it's all so easy to understand and imagine and feel like you're truly there. I loved reading about the strong character that Carrie is, and I absolutely adored her relationship with her father. It was the most precious thing to read. I definitely recommend this one, even if you are intimidated, because it is about tennis. I think you'll still be able to understand what's going on, because she writes in a way that doesn't really matter if you know the sport or not. But this one was so good, and I can't wait to see the film come out.
I did end up putting mine in order. I don't know if it's exact, but from what I remember, I was able to kind of make a list. So I think I'll start with my least favorite out of all my favorites and then make my way up. The last book I'll do will be like my favorite book of the year. You guys probably already know what it is. But to start off, it's actually a book that is on both of our lists. We didn't read a lot of the same books this year, but out of all of them, this was one of our favorites together, and it is The House by Christina Lauren. You guys know we've talked about it a lot recently. This one is really interesting because it is a little bit of a YA horror novel with a romance involved. The setting is this really spooky, eerie house in town, and we're basically following a girl who moves back to her hometown, gets reacquainted with her first love, and that crush develops. However, he lives in the spooky house on the street, and let's just say whatever lives in the house with him does not want them to be together. So it's super interesting. The writing was fantastic. We do love Christina Lauren's romance books, so we love the fact that they came out with a book like this. It was super entertaining and not talked about as much as their romances, though it should be. So highly recommend if you're looking for like a YA spooky book, especially for spooky season next year.
The next one I have is actually so funny, because if you would have told me last year, before I even picked this book up, that it would be one of my top books of this year, I wouldn't have believed you, because I really didn't think I was gonna like the series. But it is Shatter Me by Tahiri Mafi. Honestly, I think I was just being too hard on these covers. I think I was judging them because the story is so good. So this is a YA fantasy, and we're following Juliet, who is a 17-year-old girl, and she has a lethal touch that can kill anyone if they touch her for too long. That concept alone was already so crazy and so captivating for me. The end of this book really just kicks off the whole series, and I found myself hooked after this, so highly recommend.
You guys know it wouldn't be a favorites video if I didn't include a Penelope Douglas book. I know that author is not for everyone, but you guys know Penelope Douglas is for me. And the ones that I have are Corrupt and Hideaway in the Devil's Night series. This is a darker romance series where each book follows a different couple. Book 1, Corrupt, had a boyfriend's brother trope, and it was a revenge story where the guy wanted revenge on her, so it was super interesting, fast-paced. And then book 2 is more of a romantic, suspenseful type of book, and it included one of my favorite characters of the year, Banks. So I love this one just as much. I know this series is a hit or miss for a lot of people, but it was a hit for me. I can't wait to finish the rest of the series in the new year. But this concept, this world, this group of guys is just so prominent in my head. I think about them all the time. The stories are so interesting. You guys know that Penelope Douglas kind of likes to push the envelope when it comes to romance, and I always have a really fun time with it. So I ended up really enjoying these. They made the list for this year, and out of all the Penelope Douglas books that I've read so far, I think the Devil's Night series is one of my top favorites.
The next one I have is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and I was so intimidated going into this because I had never read a historical fiction, and I really didn't think I was gonna like the genre, but now I love the genre. In the story, we're following two sisters who live in France during World War II, and they are fighting to survive against the Nazis. The story really just shows like their bravery and their resilience and like everything that they did to try and help everyone through this tough situation. I know Kristen Hanna did base the story off of a woman who actually was helping during this time, and it makes me kind of sad because I feel like there's probably moments in time when like women have done a lot and it goes unnoticed, like in history class. It was so much that they did to help everyone during this time, and I don't know, it was just really emotional. I really enjoyed it. I'm always collecting Kristen Hanna books now because I love this one so much, and I really hope that this adaptation is still going to come out with the Fanning sisters because I know it would do such a good job.
So the next one I have is another one that is on both of our lists for today, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. We read this one at the beginning of the year. I think it was one of our very first buddy reads, and we had such a good time with it. We didn't know what to expect because we had never read a sci-fi book before, and this was a great one to start with. In this story, we follow a man who wakes up in space with no memory of who he is or why he's there, and the whole time he's kind of just trying to piece together what's happened. It was a super interesting story. There was a lot of scientific talk throughout, but the ending was fantastic. This went in a route that I was not expecting, but I ended up really loving it.
I actually remember listening to the audiobook while reading this one, and I think it just added to the story. Like, you know, sometimes audiobooks, they're just kind of reading to you and they're not really like getting into the story. I think this narrator really did enhance the overall experience for me while also helping me get through those scientific moments that I didn't understand. Up next, of course, we all knew this was going to be on my list, and it is the Mind F series by St. Abbey. I can't believe I barely read it this year, honestly. This was actually one of my 5-star reads, which is very rare for me. Do I give books 5 stars? This is a dark romance, but also a mystery thriller, which I think is the reason why it kept me so entertained the whole way through. In this one, we're following Lana Myers, who is getting revenge for horrible things that were done to her and her family, but she ends up falling in love with the FBI profiler that is in charge of her case. That concept is what makes it bearable to sit through this thick of a book. Because each book in this series ended on such a shock factor, it made it so easy for me to just breeze through this whole series. And also, I normally don't even like epilogues, but this one has one of my favorite epilogues ever, so a very good read.
So this next one I have is a dark romance that I would not recommend to anyone unless I knew their specific tastes and preferences, just because it is such a dark book. But I did include it today because it was one of the books I read this year that just really stuck with me, and it is The Cat and Mouse Duet by H.D. Carlton, Haunting and Hunting Adeline. Book 1 is a dark stalker romance, and book 2 does continue the story but is significantly darker and covers extremely deep, disturbing topics, so I don't want to promote the book to anyone who doesn't know what they're getting themselves into. As always, check trigger warnings before reading anything if you need to, but this duet specifically, please check trigger warnings because I didn't, and I definitely should have. As a pair, I think I'd give these like a 4.5 stars. I will remember this couple in this story forever, but do proceed with caution. Like I already said, I can't stress that enough. I know the author said she's coming out with like a surprise spin-off or something in this world, and I can't wait to read that.
Next, I have The Hotel Nantucket by Ellen Hilderbrand, and this was my first ever Ellen Hilderbrand book, and I absolutely loved it. It honestly was the perfect summer read. So now I agree that she is the queen of summer books. So The Hotel Nantucket was a really popular hotel back in the day, and then a fire broke out and it actually killed a 19-year-old girl, and then the hotel was abandoned. And fast forward to now, there's like a billionaire and this girl, and they're trying to like rebuild it, renovate it, and have it back to being the hotel to go to. So we're following all of these people who are employed at the hotel and also the guests who are coming to stay at the hotel. The hotel is also haunted by that 19-year-old girl, but she's not like a scary haunt.
Okay.
She's just like there.
We love Casper.
Yes, exactly. She's just there kind of watching everything. But this one was so much fun. There were so many characters and I was a little intimidated at that at first, but I actually really did enjoy seeing everyone's story and how different everyone's lives were. It really did remind me of that show Below Deck, which is one of my favorite reality TV shows ever, where you're just following all of these different people and you get to know their lives outside of work and the things that they struggle with. And I also really liked getting to know the guests that were staying at the hotel too. So it was just really fun. The perfect summer read.
So up next, I have Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This was my first V.E. Schwab book, and I absolutely loved it. In this book, Olivia is summoned to her family's manor after a lifetime living in an orphanage, and she sets out to discover what drove her mother and countless other relatives to the edge. I just loved how dark and eerie this entire book was. The setting is creepy because it's at this old haunted mansion, but it was a perfect amount of like creepy and spooky with a good plot. Such a page turner. I absolutely loved this story. This is what I wanted from Belladonna, and Belladonna didn't deliver in this way. So I highly recommend this one if you like Belladonna or if you just like a YA gothic type of book. But this is what made me fall in love with this author's writing, so I can't wait to read more of her as well in the new year.
So the next one I have is the most popular romantasy book of the year. year. Y'all know what it is. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Of course, this is really what everybody was debating about. You either loved it or you hated it, and honestly, I loved it. I had such a good time, but because it was so hyped, I was super nervous going into it because normally I don't tend to love the books that are super hyped on Book Talk, but I was so happy that this one actually ended up working out for me. And the cliffhanger on this one has me so ready to read that next one. I think I've just been really intimidated in trying to get through some of my shorter books for the rest of the year, but Iron Flame is definitely going to be one that I read in January.
Big dark romance here for me, because I have another one here on my favorites list, and it is books 1 and 2 in the Darkverse series by Runex. You guys know how long I was searching for a good mafia romance. When it comes to dark romances, I feel like there's an off balance from like smut and dark topics to a really good plot. And something that I love about Runex's writing is she makes sure that there's like an emphasis on the plot, and that's something that's important to her, and that definitely shows throughout the writing. So I had such a great time with these two. In this story, a 20-year-old mystery resurfaces and Morena infiltrates the Kane household with intent on killing him. Unaware of a tie that binds them together, books 1 and 2 are both about Morena and Tristan, and I am absolutely obsessed with the story. It's dark, it's gritty, it's romantic, it's everything that I need in a dark mafia romance, so I highly recommend if you want a good one. I can't wait to finish this series. There's 3 more books, we're gonna meet new couples, but this was my favorite couple of the year. So you guys knew it was gonna be on my favorites list. I've talked about it a lot, and for good reason. Runex has a lot of good projects coming out soon, so I can't wait to read more of her as well.
Y'all know I had to do this one. It is Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. This is the second book in the Scythe series. Are y'all tired of hearing us talk about Scythe and Neil Shusterman?
I got a whole shelf dedicated to Scythe.
Y'all know we love this man. His mind is crazy, his work is crazy. And this book actually also ended on such a huge cliffhanger. Probably the biggest cliffhanger that I've read this whole year. And I think I've just been scared to go to that third book to find out what has happened. And also
get into it.
When we went to the Neil Shusterman meet and greet, somebody said something. They asked a question and it like completely spoiled the end of the series for me, I think. I don't know, I guess I've been waiting to like forget it, but I haven't forgotten it yet. I think I just need to read the book at this point. But yeah, y'all know what this is. We talk about it all the time. In this series, humanity has conquered everything evil, so there's no more deaths. The only way that you can die is if a scythe picks you to die, which is absolutely crazy. This is definitely a series I'm gonna continue next year.
So next, this book I knew was gonna make my favorites list halfway into it, and it is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This really made me feel like I stepped into an entire new category of fantasy. I think because I do like a lot of the YA fantasy books and a lot of romantasy books, that I was a little unprepared going into this, and I knew it, and that's why it took me so long to start it, but it was fan-freaking-tastic, you guys. High fantasy world, intense, a lot of stuff's going on. We're following a peasant girl who gets accepted into a really prestigious academy. She ends up discovering a really mysterious power, and she trains to become a shaman to a very vengeful god. Then war breaks out, she ends up having to become a soldier, and it gets dark and crazy. I wish I could put into words how R.F. Kuang's writing is. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have read it, but if you haven't yet, it's just a completely different level. Everything about this book was intense, but it was absolutely immersive. One of the more serious fantasy books I've read, but one of the more fantastic ones. Do check trigger warnings. I didn't know that I needed to before going in, but it ended up being a really fantastic book. Like, this is... Why didn't I give this 5 stars? I was just being picky.
Yeah.
This is a 5-star book if I've ever seen one.
We do that a lot.
I know.
Speaking of doing that, this book I gave 4.75 for no reason. It should have been a 5-star, honestly. And it is Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. I really love this one so much. I've read a few Abby Jimenez books, and this one, it's so good. But I also love that Abby Jimenez writes more than just like a simple romance story. I love that she also talks about hard topics and like real life things, and it isn't just all like this sappy, cute romance. So in this one, we're following Vanessa, who knows she has a 50% chance of getting ALS, which is a disease that has taken the lives of several women in her family before they even got the chance to turn 30. So she really just lives every single day like it is her last, and she's actually built up like a YouTube channel that kind of surrounds the cause, and she goes around and travels until she becomes the guardian of a baby, and she meets a man that makes her feel complete. But it's like she doesn't want that in her life because she feels like any single day now could be her last day. So I actually cried my eyes out when I realized that this author based Vanessa off of a real YouTuber, and her name was Claire Winland. And I just think that it's so crazy. But this was definitely one of my favorite romances of the year, and I can't wait to read more from this author.
Now we're getting into some of my 5-star reads of the year, starting with Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I picked up this sci-fi because we liked Project Hail Mary so much, and I'm so glad I did because this book was everything and more. In this book, we're following a team of 4 women who set out into an area that is abandoned and cut off from civilization. It was just super strange and unique. The writing was so interesting. I don't want to spoil anything that happens in the book, just know we're following these 4 women. It's one of those things where like they're kind of their worst enemy because they start to turn on each other while they're in this area. It's one of those stories that is a little bit unsettling but super well written. It's one of the most unique books I've read all year. Definitely recommend if you're trying to get into sci-fi, if you already like sci-fi, or just need a super short, interesting read. I'm so happy I experienced it this year and found another 5-star book for me.
You still need to watch the movie.
I know, there is a movie adaptation, but I heard it's a little bit different.
It is definitely different. So I ended up adding The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes in one of my top books of 2023. I just had such a fun time with these characters. I think any book that has some kind of found family just automatically becomes something that I just adore. And this one we're following Cassie, and she has a natural talent for profiling people just based off their behavior. And she meets other teenagers with similar abilities, and she ends up joining a special FBI program where they use these kids to help them solve cold cases. I remember being in such a huge reading slump before reading this, and this just took me right out of it. I was so captivated. I never wanted to put the book down. The mystery and the romance was done so well, and I just really loved it. I think because I'm also comparing it to The Inheritance Game since it is the same author, and I know I love this series way more than that one.
Up next, we have another one that's on both of our lists, and it is If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. This one was hyped up for a reason. It was popular on Book Talk for so long because it deserved it. This is a YA contemporary story where we're following 2 childhood best friends that experience love, loss, and the journey to self-discovery. It was sad, it was beautiful, it was a 5-star read for me. Go read it if you need a good cry. I cannot wait to read the companion novel that's coming out next year.
Such a good story. I remember just feeling like I was back in high school and I was like friends with all of these people and just watching everything go down. I still think about these characters and the things that they went through, so definitely recommend if you want a good cry.
I have Zodiac Academy Book 6 by Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. You guys know how I feel about this series. You already know because I talk about it constantly, but this was a 5-star read for me. This whole series follows twin sisters who realize they're actually fae, and they're swept off into the fae realm where they have to learn to harness their power while also defending their throne from the 4 heirs trying to steal it. It is a dark paranormal romance that's just set in a fantasy world. So I think that's why a lot of people who read fantasy books go into this and think it's not very good, because at the center of it, it is basically just a dark bully romance. But it's set in a really cool world. They get shipped off to a magical school, so it kind of feels like an adult Harry Potter. It's spicy, it's dramatic, but it is addictive. So I can't wait to finish this series. This was definitely one of my favorites of the year. I then have Circe by Madeline Miller, the same author from The Song of Achilles. This book is an adaptation of Greek myths told from the perspective of a witch named Circe, and it was absolutely fantastic. The writing in this was insane. It is not a love story like The Song of Achilles. It's very much just Circe's story, how she's grown up, her own experiences, and then all of these big Greek myths are happening throughout her life, and you're getting everything from her side. This is another one that's like a devastating story, but it's so beautifully done. Circe definitely became one of my favorite characters this year. I do recommend this whether or not you did like The Song of Achilles. It's very different, but still packs the same punch. This is one I'll be thinking about for a while. I do recommend if you need something like whimsical and beautifully written.
Okay, so the last one I have is one that I just recently read and I can't stop thinking about it, and it is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. So in this one, Clementine falls in love with her temporary roommate until she finds out that he is quite literally living 7 years in her past. But her aunt had always told her that this apartment complex has a pinch in time, and she never took her seriously. And now that her aunt has passed, she's kind of realizing that her aunt was being serious. So we just see this character kind of go back and forth from the 7 years. I really did just love the magical time traveling aspect of it all. The romance was so genuine and sweet, and I really did love all the characters. And I also did appreciate the grieving aspect of the story. But I really loved it, and I'm glad I did because I know so many other people loved it as well, and I can't wait to read more from this author.
We've come down to the top of the top, my best favorite books of 2023. You guys already knew what it was. You're gonna be tired because you've already heard me talk about them, but they deserve the top spot, and you guys know I'm gonna put them there. Sarah J. Maas haters, see yourselves out. Thank you for watching up to this point. But I have my 2 Sarah J. Maas books that I read this year, which is Kingdom of Ash, the last final book in the Throne of Glass series, and A Court of Silver Flames, the most recent ACOTAR release and the first one in the spin-off series. Starting with A Court of Silver Flames, this at its core is a redemption story. It's a journey to self-discovery. It deals with loss, love, friendship, womanhood, everything and more was packed into this book, and it was done so well. I've always really appreciated how Sarah J. Maas deals and writes with trauma and healing, and how certain things and experiences really affect you throughout life. The way that she is able to write about that and keep it a constant throughout her series, it's just everything to me, because you don't see that a lot. A lot of crazy stuff will happen to our characters in like fantasy books, and it kind of just goes away, and you know it's not really like that in real life. So I appreciate the fact that she shows how long people are affected after certain things and how messy the journey is to get through that. Gosh, I love this woman. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. This is honestly probably my favorite book in the ACOTAR world. I can't wait for more books in the spin-off series. I need her to release those ASAP, but Nesta has really become one of my favorite characters. And then my top book of the year, 5-star read, you guys know, is Kingdom of Ash. What a great way to end a fantastic series. I know I'm really late reading Throne of Glass, but this book, I mean, changed my world. It's my Roman Empire. You guys already know. I've got 3 shelves dedicated to the series. This entire series follows a teenage assassin in a corrupt kingdom, and every single book gets better as it goes on. The characters, the storyline, everything was done to perfection. I love these people. I can't wait to start Crescent City, because I'm sure that'll be a new favorite series of mine in the new year. But this is a perfect 5-star read, and I will forever think about this story. Thank you, Sarah J. Maas. That, you guys, was all 23 of our most favorite books of this year.
I hope that totaled out to 23.
We can't count. I also included a lot of like duets, which I counted as 1, but that should have been 23 books. If not, you got a couple extra.
That is pretty much it for today's day 9 of Bookmas. Who knows, we could probably have a few extra favorites by the end of the year.
That's true. We have the rest of this week. Might have to move some of these, bump them off the list, and add some others. It was really fun though, looking back to see everything we have read and really pick like our top favorites and most memorable books of the year for us. Definitely let us know in the comments what some of your favorite books of 2023 were, and if you're currently reading anything that you think could be a favorite of 2023.
Let us know if you agree with some of these or if you disagree with some of these.
Yeah, let's argue in the comments. But thank you guys so much for watching. We are going to end out today. Tomorrow we have an exciting one, because we will be doing the opposite of today's video, so we'll be very negative, but this was really fun to do. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to join our book club if you haven't already. Also make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
Okay.
The cat.
He's perfect.
Okay, cute.
He is so perfect.
That's Timberland, also known as Cat, Kitty.
Together we've read over 100. Oh, look at that little hair.
Oh, great. I'm trying to get some water.
He like looks like, what the hell?
You can pick it up thinking it's just going to be like a light, easy read, but it is jam-packed with some amazing stuff.
Okay.
Me selling something to someone.